The person who lied about you is panicking now. God stepped in. Something has shifted in the unseen realm, and you felt it before you understood it. The pressure you've sensed lately is not confusion. It is movement. A turning of events that could not be stopped any longer. What was hidden behind false words has begun to surface, and the one who spoke against you knows it. Panic has entered their spirit, even if their face still pretends calm. Heaven has responded, and when God steps in, no lie can stand upright for long. Archangel Michael's presence is near as this message unfolds, not to frighten you, but to steady you. This is not a warning meant to scare, it is confirmation meant to anchor you. You were not imagining the resistance. You were not overreacting. The spiritual tension around your name was real, and it reached a threshold that required divine intervention. You see, lies can circulate for a season. They can gain traction when repeated by the insecure, the jealous, or the fearful. But lies have a weakness: they require constant maintenance. Truth does not. And the person who lied about you has been exhausting themselves trying to hold together a collapsing story. What once felt powerful to them has now turned into a trap. This is where panic begins. Not the loud kind. Not the obvious kind. But the inward unraveling that happens when someone realizes they went too far and cannot reverse it. You may have wondered why God seemed silent while your name was being mishandled. Why doors slowed. Why certain people pulled back without explanation. Heaven was not ignoring you. Heaven was watching carefully, allowing the lie to fully reveal its intent. Because partial exposure would not have been enough. God waited until the false narrative overplayed its hand. And now, intervention has begun. There are conversations happening without your involvement. Questions being raised that were never meant to be asked. Subtle inconsistencies noticed by people who once believed the lie without question. The person who spoke falsely about you senses the shift. Their confidence is eroding. They are replaying their own words, realizing they no longer sound convincing, even to themselves. This is why Archangel Michael's energy is connected to this moment. He is assigned to matters of divine justice, spiritual order, and the exposure of deception. Not through chaos, but through clarity. What unfolds next will not require you to defend yourself. In fact, your silence has already spoken louder than any argument ever could. If you've remained grounded, if you resisted the urge to retaliate, if you chose dignity when provoked, this message is especially for you. That restraint was not weakness. It was alignment. And alignment always attracts protection. Midway through this unfolding, you may notice something unexpected. The lie collapsing will not feel as satisfying as you imagined. Instead of triumph, there may be a quiet heaviness. A realization of how close you came to doubting yourself. This is why God intervened when He did, not only to correct the falsehood, but to preserve your identity. You were never meant to carry the burden of someone else's insecurity. And here is what the person who lied does not know yet: exposure is only the first layer. The deeper consequence is the loss of credibility they are about to experience. Trust, once fractured, does not regenerate easily. Even those who stay polite with them will begin to observe more carefully. The stage lights are dimming, and they feel it. If this message resonates, allow yourself to stay present with it. Let it settle. You don't need to rush ahead. There is more being revealed soon, details you couldn't see before, motives that will suddenly make sense. What is coming next will explain why the lie happened in the first place, and why it was never actually about you. But before that truth surfaces, something else must happen, something the liar is desperately trying to prevent. And that moment is closer than you think. The fear they are feeling now did not come suddenly. It built slowly, quietly, in moments when they thought no one was watching. It surfaced late at night, when distractions faded and their own thoughts turned against them. Because lies do not only deceive others, they haunt the one who releases them. And once God steps in, that haunting intensifies. What you may not realize yet is this: the person who lied about you is no longer controlling the narrative. They are reacting to it. Every message they send, every explanation they attempt, every casual laugh they force, it is all driven by fear of exposure. They are watching faces more closely now, reading tone, replaying conversations in their mind, wondering who knows more than they're letting on. This is not coincidence. It is consequence. Archangel Michael's assignment in moments like this is not to strike, but to corner truth. To create spiritual pressure so intense that deception begins to collapse under its own weight. And that pressure is already active. You might feel calmer than expected lately, even though nothing has fully resolved yet. That calm is not denial, it is protection. Because when justice moves, God often shelters the one who was wrong from the noise of the correction. There are people who once listened to the lie without question who are now feeling unsettled. Not because you defended yourself, but because something no longer adds up. The story they were told has gaps. The tone feels exaggerated. The motivation seems off. And what is most dangerous for a liar is not confrontation, it is doubt. Doubt spreads silently, person to person, until belief collapses. You may soon notice subtle shifts. Invitations that return. Eye contact that lingers longer. A sudden change in how your name is spoken when you're not in the room. These are signs that perception is correcting itself. And correction, once started, rarely stops halfway. At the center of this unraveling is panic, not loud, not dramatic, but suffocating. The kind that makes someone second-guess every move. They are afraid to speak too much now. Afraid to say too little. Afraid that one wrong word will expose everything they worked so hard to construct. This is the cost of building on falsehood instead of truth. You were never meant to carry that cost. There is also something else happening, something deeper. God is not only addressing what was said about you, He is addressing why it was said. The jealousy. The comparison. The fear of being overshadowed. The need to feel powerful by diminishing someone else. These motives are being brought into the light, not to shame, but to neutralize. Because unchecked insecurity is dangerous. You may be tempted, as things begin to shift, to finally speak your side. To explain. To clarify. But wisdom is guiding you differently. Silence is still doing its work. Your restraint continues to confuse the liar, because they expected retaliation. They prepared for conflict, not composure. And your peace is disarming them more than any accusation ever could. This is also why your support matters more than you realize. When you quietly affirm truth, through presence, through attention, Through even something as simple as engaging with messages that carry clarity, you align yourself with the movement of justice. Some choose to express that alignment through the thanks button, not as obligation, but as a way of saying, I stand with truth, and I recognize what is happening here. Even small gestures matter in moments like this. As this unfolds, you may receive information indirectly. Someone mentioning something by accident. A detail slipping out that confirms your intuition. These are not accidents. They are fractures. And once a fracture forms, collapse becomes inevitable. Still, there is one thing that has not happened yet, something the person who lied is desperately hoping to avoid. A moment of undeniable recognition. A realization by someone whose opinion carries weight. When that happens, the lie will not just be questioned, it will be invalidated. And when that door opens, there will be no way to close it again. What comes next will explain why this exposure had to happen now, and why delaying it any longer would have cost you more than you know. The timing is not random. The silence was not abandonment. And the panic you sense is only the beginning. There is a reason this exposure did not happen immediately, and it goes deeper than timing. God was not only protecting your reputation, He was protecting your future. Had the lie collapsed too early, it would have been dismissed as misunderstanding. Had it gone on much longer, it would have attempted to rewrite your identity. So heaven intervened at the precise moment when truth could no longer be denied, yet damage could still be reversed. This is the stage you are entering now. Behind the scenes, the person who lied about you is becoming increasingly unstable, not outwardly, but internally. Their thoughts are scattered. Their confidence is fractured. They are beginning to over-explain things no one asked about. They are volunteering details that don't fit together. This is what happens when fear replaces control. They are no longer acting from strategy, but from survival. And survival exposes everything. Archangel Michael's presence in this phase is firm and unyielding. Not aggressive, but unmovable. His role is to hold the line of truth steady while deception collapses around it. You may notice that you are no longer triggered the way you once were. Things that would have sent you into spirals before now feel distant, almost irrelevant. This emotional detachment is not numbness, it is elevation. You are being lifted above the chaos so you can see it clearly. There is also a spiritual reversal taking place. The very tactics used against you, misrepresentation, whispering, distortion, are now turning inward on the one who released them. People are questioning their motives, their consistency, their integrity. This reversal is not something you engineered. It is the natural consequence of standing still while God moved. You may soon sense an urge to forgive, even before an apology comes. That does not mean reconciliation. It means release. Forgiveness here is not about letting someone back into your life. It is about refusing to let them live rent-free in your spirit. Justice and forgiveness are not opposites. They work together. One corrects the situation, the other frees you from carrying its residue. But do not misunderstand, accountability is still unfolding. There is a specific individual or authority figure who will soon recognize the discrepancy. Someone perceptive. Someone whose discernment is sharp, even if their demeanor is calm. When that recognition happens, it will feel subtle to others, but seismic to the liar. because they know that once that person sees through them, the illusion is over. This is why their panic is escalating now. They may attempt to rewrite the story one last time, to soften it, to spiritualize it, to frame themselves as misunderstood or concerned. But the energy has shifted. What once persuaded now repels. People are growing tired of the performance. Authenticity always exposes artifice eventually. You are not meant to intervene at this stage. In fact, your continued composure is the final confirmation that you were never what they claimed. Your consistency is your vindication. And the more you remain anchored, the faster the false narrative dissolves. This is also why it matters that you stay connected to truth, to messages that reinforce clarity, to moments that remind you who you are. When you engage, when you quietly affirm what resonates, you are not just supporting a message, you are aligning with it. Even something as gentle as liking, subscribing, or offering thanks is an act of agreement with what God is doing in this season. Alignment accelerates outcomes. There is still one layer left to be revealed, and it is the most uncomfortable for the one who lied. Not exposure to strangers, but recognition by someone they hoped would never see through them. When that moment arrives, they will realize something devastating. They did not just lie about you, they underestimated God's involvement in your life. And that realization changes everything. You may not hear an apology. You may not receive a confession. But you will receive something more powerful: restoration of position. Respect recalibrated. Doors reopening without explanation. Momentum returning without effort. These are the fingerprints of divine correction. Pay attention to what returns naturally. That is where truth has been restored. The next phase will explain why this experience was necessary, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because what God is moving you into requires discernment you could only gain by walking through this. And once that purpose is revealed, the pain will finally make sense. But before that revelation arrives, there is one final move being made behind the scenes, quiet, precise, irreversible. And when it completes, nothing about your standing will ever be questioned again. What happens next will feel quieter than you expected, but far more permanent. This is the phase where God stops correcting the lie and starts repositioning you. While attention has been drawn toward the one who spoke falsely, something else has been happening simultaneously. Your standing is being recalibrated. Not through announcements. Not through dramatic confrontations. But through subtle realignments that place you exactly where you belong. You may notice that certain people begin to treat you differently. More carefully, more respectfully, even if nothing was ever openly discussed. That shift is not politeness. It is recognition. Truth does not need to be declared loudly to be acknowledged deeply. Once perception corrects itself, behavior follows. The person who lied feels this loss more than you realize. What unsettles them now is not exposure alone, it is irrelevance. They are beginning to sense that the influence they once thought they had is slipping away. Their words no longer carry the same weight. Their opinions are no longer received without question. And the most unsettling realization of all is this: life is moving forward without their narrative being central anymore. This is the moment many liars fear more than judgment. Archangel Michael's role here is protective and strategic. Not only guarding you, but guiding outcomes so that justice does not derail your peace. You may feel drawn inward during this time, less interested in explaining yourself, less reactive to opinions, more focused on what genuinely aligns with you. That is not withdrawal. That is refinement. Because what is ahead of you cannot be accessed by those still operating from distortion. There is also an invitation unfolding, not one spoken aloud, but one felt. An invitation to belong to something more intentional. To step into spaces where truth is valued, not questioned. Where discernment is shared, not mocked. Some recognize this alignment through deeper connection, by choosing to stay close, to listen regularly, to join what resonates rather than pass by it. That is why even something like the join button exists, not as pressure, but as an option for those who sense they are meant to walk deeper, not just observe from a distance. You are not meant to stand alone in clarity. As this repositioning continues, the person who lied may attempt one final maneuver, an indirect apology, a vague statement, or a spiritualized explanation that avoids responsibility. This is not repentance. It is relief-seeking. And it will not restore what they lost. Because restoration requires truth, not performance. You are not required to respond. In fact, your lack of response will speak volumes. It communicates that you are no longer entangled. That the chapter has closed internally, even if it remains open externally. And closure within yourself is the greatest form of freedom. There is something else you may notice now, opportunities resurfacing that once seemed delayed. Conversations restarting naturally. Momentum returning without you forcing it. This is not coincidence. It is compensation. God does not merely correct injustice. He restores what was slowed by it. But He also upgrades the lesson. You are emerging from this season with sharper discernment. You will recognize false humility faster. You will trust energy over words. And you will no longer feel the need to prove yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. This is not bitterness, it is wisdom. The final stage is near now. The moment when everything clicks into place, not just externally, but internally. When you realize that this lie did not derail you, it redirected you. It filtered out what could not go forward with you. And it revealed how deeply protected you truly are. The person who lied is beginning to understand this too, and that realization is heavier than any consequence they imagined. Because they see now that harming you did not elevate them. It activated heaven on your behalf. And what comes next will confirm that unmistakably. One last truth is about to surface. One that will silence any remaining doubt and settle this chapter permanently. And when it does, you will finally understand why this had to unfold exactly this way. The final truth does not arrive loudly. It arrives clearly. This is the moment when everything settles, not because everyone suddenly admits what they did, but because you no longer need them to. The lie loses its power not when it is shouted down, but when it becomes irrelevant to your forward movement. And that is exactly what is happening now. What the person who lied about you is facing is not just exposure, it is displacement. They are realizing that the season they tried to dominate through distortion has ended. The attention they sought has moved elsewhere. The influence they borrowed through manipulation has expired. And what remains is an uncomfortable awareness. They are standing still while you are being carried forward. This is the quiet justice of God. Archangel Michael's presence in this final phase is stabilizing, sealing, and protective. It is the energy that closes doors cleanly so they cannot be reopened later. You may feel an internal confirmation now, a deep knowing that you are done explaining, done replaying, done questioning yourself. That knowing is the seal. Once it settles, nothing external can unsettle you again. There will be people who never apologize. People who never acknowledge they were wrong. People who quietly change their behavior and hope that silence erases memory. Let them. Closure does not require confession. Closure requires clarity. And you have received it. What matters now is what opens next. You are stepping into a space where your name no longer needs defending because your presence speaks for itself. Where your consistency outweighs any rumor. Where your character becomes the reference point. This is not vindication, it is elevation. And elevation always creates distance. The person who lied may still think about you often. Not with anger, but with regret. Regret that they misjudged you. Regret that they underestimated the protection over your life. Regret that their attempt to control the narrative only revealed their own fractures. That regret is theirs to carry. You are not meant to inherit it. Your role now is forward focus. There will be moments when you look back, not in pain, but in understanding. You will recognize how close you came to shrinking yourself to survive misunderstanding. And you will feel gratitude that you didn't. That you stayed grounded. That you trusted timing even when clarity felt delayed. That trust changed everything. As you move forward, stay connected to what reinforces truth in you. Stay attentive to what resonates rather than what distracts. When you choose to engage with messages that align, whether through presence, attention, or simple support, you are not just consuming content. You are affirming alignment. And alignment keeps you in flow with what God is doing next. This chapter is closing without chaos. Without confrontation. Without you having to prove anything. And that is the greatest confirmation of all. Because when God steps in, He does not just silence lies, He repositions lives. The panic you sensed was real. The intervention was real. And the outcome will be undeniable. What comes next will not require explanation. It will speak for itself, in opportunities, in peace, in restored momentum, and in a deeper trust in your own discernment. You will walk differently now. Not guarded, but grounded. Not hardened, but clear. And if this message found you at the right moment, it is not by accident. Stay close to what confirms truth. Stay aligned with what feels steady rather than loud. And remember, the chapter that tried to break you ended up preparing you. The story does not end with the lie. It begins with what rises after it. And what rises next will surprise everyone, including you.